Assalamu alaikum, my dear friends from beautiful Istanbul, Turkey.
I'm here in a beautiful Sultan Ahmet area of Istanbul, a place where history and modern life blend seamlessly. To meet an extraordinary young entrepreneur, Brother Baturhan, who came from Australia, is the founder of a unique startup aiming to become something like Alibaba of Türkiye.
When you put dedication, hard work and effort, it's timeless regardless of where you imply that in what scenario, because you say, wow, I can actually do whatever I put my head towards.
His goal is to connect Turkish manufacturers with the rest of the world,
Turkey needs to digitalize their manufacturing sector.
tackling major challenges faced by many Muslim countries through a blend of technology, business innovation, and leadership.
No one cares until everyone cares. Everyone wants to come in and invest at the same time, which is when you've made money.
His story is filled with valuable lessons for anyone looking to start or grow their own business.
How do I continuously improve the website, improve the technology, and improve the output of my staff members?
Join me in this conversation as Baturhan shared his journey, a path of many sacrifices, past successes, and the tough decisions he had to make to pursue his dream.
How are you today?
Alhamdulillah, brother. Thanks for your lovely introduction, and also welcome to you to the lovely city of Istanbul, in which I've been residing for the past 3 years after being born and raised in Melbourne. So it's obviously very different to where we're used to and where we've been living, but it's got its own beauty, and people that live here recognize that beauty and find it very hard to live anywhere else. So welcome to you. Thanks for your lovely introduction, and I'm very glad we're doing this recording sitting down. Otherwise, whenever we're standing up with you, brother, everyone looks at me like I'm your little child. MashaAllah. Brother Almir is very tall. So it's with very big joy that I'm in here sitting down with you. Thanks for coming. I know you had a very busy schedule, so I'm glad we fit this in while you were here. Like you said, I moved here 2 years ago to embark on a journey and try to do a startup that's not only beneficial for me on a business sense, but also for the country of my origin, because I feel like I have a duty and obligation towards this country that's given my family so much. And so I moved here, and the way I did it was very instant, like they call it, burning the ships, leave the ships behind and just see what happens, because I have 2 businesses in Australia that are still currently operating, and I just burnt the ships, left everything, sailed across the other side of the world, and I've had very unique experiences, and alhamdulillah, I'm very blessed to be able to do this.
The first question I wanted to ask Baturhan was about his experience and expectations in moving from Australia to Turkey and leaving everything behind.
Well, of course, growing up, I came here on holidays, so I knew sort of what I was expecting, and I felt quite confident in myself, saying, well, I've been here 8 to 9 times before this, so it'll be more of the same. But absolutely I was wrong, because holidaying in Turkey and living in Turkey are 2 different, very, very different things. And you gain a whole different perspective that you will never ever get holidaying or spending short amounts of time, because you're hit with the reality and you're part of the culture here, really part of the culture here. So I give you a simple example. I have quite fluent Turkish, and I've had good Turkish growing up. Until I came here and I started living here, and I realized that there's so many Turkish words that we don't use in our day-to-day Turkish, especially when it comes to bureaucratic things. You're registering a company, they'll be like, where's your kashe imza? And I'm like, what's a kashe imza, right? And it's just a stamp to show your signature to register something. But I've never used this term in my life. So I looked very stupid to a lot of people for the first year that I was here. And then of course there's the whole fact that Istanbul is obviously very congested. The amount of people living in Istanbul is almost the same amount of people living in the whole country of Australia, which was very, very different. So everything is much more fast paced. But human beings are built very beautifully, mashallah. We adapt to every environment that we're in, as long as you have a positive and optimistic mindset. So I think after a couple of those rusty months, I integrated quite well, and now it feels like home.
The next question I wanted to ask was how he got into business right after high school and managed to build a successful venture from the start.
Well, brother, I want to answer this question with a personal anecdote that we have with you, in which you would not remember, but I remember vividly. So you were also at the same school that I was at, and you would take us students in and ask us our career objectives. I don't know if you remember this, but you asked me a whole lot of questions, and I feel like every answer that I was giving wasn't very impressive until you asked one question: what was a big achievement that you've done? And I answered that question by saying, well, brother, I admit I was 86 kilos and I dropped to 66 kilos. And you said, that's interesting. That day is interesting. I said, why? You said, what did you do? And I said, well, you know, I ran, I woke up, I trained, and I walked to school every day and walked back, and I fixed my eating habits. And you put everything aside that I was telling you about my study scores and my ATAR and my results and everything like that. And you said, that's the most interesting thing. And I said, what do you mean? You said, well, when you put dedication, hard work, and effort, it's timeless, regardless of where you imply that in what scenario. It will always be good for you. So I want you to apply that same thing that you did for losing weight into other realms of the world. And that was a good turning point for me. I don't know if you remember this, but this is exactly what happened. I remember the moment it happened. So I started applying that same theory because I said to myself, okay, when I put my head to something, I've always had a bit of a, you know, chubby problem or whatever. You can fix that issue as long as you put hard work and effort. And I applied that to all realms of what I did, whether that was moving into Turkey, whether it's what I did in Australia. First, you manifest your dream, you have visions, you have ambitions, you manifest this, and then after that, you back it up with hard work, because you understand very shortly that no one is going to do this for you, and it doesn't matter if you're best friends with your family, you're on your own. And so I started applying the same principles of losing weight into different things, and alhamdulillah, it has always produced the same outcome, which is a better and healthier solution to everything.
This moment reminded me just how powerful guidance can be. We often don't realize the ripple effects of our words and actions. At your age level, just out of high school, to pursue that dream into the business, it must have been very challenging, tough, something that is unusual. I remember you starting the clothing business. Yep. And that was just before pandemic. How did you pick that line? What did you do in terms of the thinking and strategizing to actually take a step to open physical business like that?
Yeah. So I think if I analyze myself, I was always one to come up with new ideas all the time. I was a waiter and I thought of new ideas for the restaurant. How could we make this more efficient, effective for our clients? So any line of work that I went into, I felt like I was trying to improve it and make it a little bit better. And so I was working in that industry. I was working in the clothing industry, and it was the same thing again, the same principles. How can I make this a better experience for my clients? You know, what can I do? And for the first time, the clothing business was a way for me to prove that this is not only just an idea, because I'm sure everyone in the audience right now listening also comes up with some great ideas. But how about putting this into fruition? And I said one thing to myself. I said, look, I'm 19. I was 18 turning into 19. I'm young. I'm living with my parents. I don't have any outgoings. I'm at the most advantageous position I'm probably ever going to be in life. Okay. So this is my time to bring my idea, any idea that I have, into fruition. And I took the leap of faith by traveling overseas. First I went to China and I went to the Canton Fair, which I recommend to a lot of people because it opens up your horizons and you see different worlds. And that opened up my perspective, and I said, wow, there's so much to do, but I have to pick one and stick to it, right? And so that's what I did. I took the leap of faith and turned an idea that I always had into practicality. Once you've turned that idea into practicality, if that idea is genuinely a good idea and you get the fruits of return of it, then you get a different level of motivation and confidence, because you say, wow, I can actually do whatever I put my head towards. So I think I'm very comfortable or confident speaking now, but I wasn't when I first took the leap of faith. It was very hard to do because I was 19. I opened up a physical store in Essendon, which is very out of the scope of our normal demographic in Australia. But I believed in myself so much that it overcrowded logical or smart options. It was just, let's do what needs to be done.
Once that clothing business was very successful, you experienced a slowdown during the pandemic, and you adjusted your business very quickly in terms of producing the masks. How was your thought process when it comes to a situation like uncertain situations like pandemic, where everybody was shutting down in Victoria, yet you came up with a brilliant idea and you executed it quite well?
So I believe in this notion that I always still believe in: when something very bad happens, like what's worse than your shops being closed down after you've just opened and it's been successful? there has to be something you can do. I can't control the pandemic. That's way outside of my scope. But what can I control within this game, within this pandemic? What can I do? What is something that I can produce or change, right? And so I started writing this down. So what's something that I have as a skill, which was the clothing, alterations, all of this, and how do I bring this into practicality? What are my alternatives, brother? I'm gonna either sit down and cry and complain that it's so bad and COVID and pandemic is bad, or I'm gonna do something about it. Now, regardless of if I attain success or not, I feel much more comfortable doing something about it. That for me is very important. What did I do? Okay, we'll put everything aside, it's terrible, but what did I do during this terrible time? Cried, complained, or made a solution? And that's where I said to myself, okay, I have to come up with a solution. And I didn't expect the amount of demand as well, because it was not mandatory when I started. But for me, it was, well, just common logic. Okay, there's a pandemic, you know, everyone's trying to cover their face. What is the skill that I have? I have a tailor, I have alterations. How can I put that into use? I created the first mask design. I put it out there. And although we achieved good success later on, we didn't achieve this at the start. But I felt so comfortable knowing that I was doing something. Knowing that even if I wasn't making a lot of profit, the money that I was making, I could pay my staff with, and I wasn't letting anyone go. And I think Allah then decides when the right time and right place is for you, and I think I was just in the right time and right place. I was ready for when it became mandatory.
The theme I'm sensing is almost like very interesting attitude towards not allowing situation to dictate your response, and sort of looking at things that you can attach yourself to, push yourself forward. I guess that came very handy when you start then moving to Turkey.
Yep.
How did this idea of this current new business came about from that situation? What is this? What is your idea with the current business?
Yeah, look, the business that I've created in Turkey is not a revolutionary idea. The concept exists, right? But it just doesn't exist in Turkey, which prides itself on its manufacturing and increasing its manufacturing output. And what is that? It's doing trade online. In China, you can find a lot of alternatives to manufacturing out of China in a simple click of a button. What do I mean? You want to make these glass cups, right? If I want to see how much it will cost me to get 50,000 of these, it takes 5 minutes to do this with China. You go in, you write glass cups, you see 10 factories, you send them all a message, they reply very quickly, and before you know it, your business idea has some momentum, right? Now there's something happening. But this was not the case with Turkey. We're talking about a country that's increasing its manufacturing output every year, that has a very big geographical advantage to its competitors, that is doing nothing online. Everything is old school, everything is traditional, everything is just like it was 30 years ago. So I felt the need and the necessity as a buyer in Australia to have a platform like this in Turkey in which I can do business with, and couldn't find it. And I think the best ideas come from when you're searching for something for yourself, can't find it, and then you create that market yourself. And I think what I wanted to do is bring an already existing system in the world that's proven itself to the Turkish market, and hopefully allow new markets to be expanded into digitally.
Like, how do you see that whole e-commerce companies in China selling to Australia or Istanbul or London something incredibly cheap, bypassing all of the manufacturing in a local country? Like, how do you see that whole e-commerce developing globally?
When we look at the trend of manufacturing, we realize that in a capitalistic society, this is the peak of where we're going to, being able to buy directly from a manufacturer in a whole different country for cheaper than any other supplier in your country. But in the same token, we see the trend shifting now on towards Western countries applying more and more taxes, like we saw with automobiles, because the Chinese EV manufacturers just outperformed every other EV manufacturer. So to keep the market at a steady pace, the European Union, for example, started introducing taxes and taxing companies that are outperforming its local manufacturers. And I think this is going to continue to be on the rise. Otherwise, every country will be shooting itself in the foot. Of course, for consumers, they want something just cheaper, but naturally, as a government, that's not what you want for your own people. And Turkey has, I'm not sure if you're aware of this, but has taken a lot of steps into increasing the taxes on these mentioned Chinese e-commerce giants to help local sellers, because the reality of we have to be real and we have to be objective. We can't buy this for cheaper in most of our countries. This is not about Australia or Turkey. In 99% of countries, it's cheaper to buy from China. And we are aware also that companies like the ones you've mentioned before are not profitable. So they're not doing this to make profit. They're actually doing this to change consumer shopping demand. So if you can get millions, if not billions of customers onto this platform, once you do increase the prices, you have billions of shoppers. So I think the actual game here is the fact that you're changing consumer buying behavior, and I think as Western governments start realizing, they will impose more taxes to keep the fair advantage between the competitors.
How do you see countries like Turkey or any other Islamic country competing? Should they compete in being the cheapest or better quality or some sort of a mix? Where do you see, let's say, Turkey going, or where should it be going?
Like you said, every country, like Australia and China, have a free trade agreement, for example. So it's very much cheaper to purchase from China as an Australian. But Turkey actually has agreements with Europe. You know, the Ankara Agreement, for example. Hence why some Chinese companies want to start manufacturing out of Turkey, so they can take advantage of that sort of loophole. The way I see it is to outperform China on price is a long game to play. I don't think it's smart for Turkey to play on its price factor. I think it is smart to play on its value addition factor, meaning what value can a Turkish manufacturer add to this product to then sell it to its consumers. And I think that market there is much smarter for Turkey. I also think that the geographical location of Turkey, which helps reduce logistics costs, is a big power play, because China's distance to the world increases logistics costs, and logistics costs are increasing every single year. So when Turkey can send a truck to Germany in a day for a fraction of the cost, although the price of the product is more expensive, it's not just the price of the product that's important, it's the shipping, it's the logistics, it's all of these factors. So I think maintaining potentially a higher price point for Turkish manufacturers is good, as long as they can educate their buyers that with the logistics costs being reduced, it actually comes to the same price with potentially a better quality. So I think there's a big market to be played there. But also there's another perspective that I have on this whole thing. You don't have to always try to be cheaper or, cheaper logistically or even on a price point against a company. You just need to be, or a country more so, you just need to be an alternative. Some people just want to buy from Turkey, right? And when I say some people, I'm talking hundreds of thousands of companies. The problem here is that we're not even an alternative on the digital scene. We're only an alternative if someone knows someone that knows someone that knows someone that knows someone. And that's not where you want to be in a digital age. Where you want to be is just an alternative. Yes, you can research and buy from China if you want to, you can buy from India if you want to, or you can buy from Turkey. Just being an alternative is enough. And that's what I aim to actually bring to the market. New potential alternatives.
How much effort, or what did you have to do to start a business? What were some of the key things that you now realized, or that were quite challenging? Yeah. Or maybe different than what you thought? So
it's definitely much more challenging to open a business in Turkey than it is in Australia. And I know a lot of people message me constantly saying, I want to open up a business in Turkey. And they think it's on the same level. It's very far from. My strong suggestion to your audience, if this is something in their mind, Turkey market is a tougher market to penetrate. You need to have a bit more capital to start with. This is definitely the case that I've realized. And my suggestion is pay a little bit more money to get a lawyer from the get-go. If there's something that I could have changed, get a lawyer or an accountant from the get-go. And there's freelance platforms in Turkey. I'm going to name them because one's Beyond Look, for example. Go on Beyond Look, get a freelance lawyer and tell them to help you draft this. You're going to pay $2,000-3,000 more, but damn, are you going to save the hurdles that I went through? Because it's very bureaucratic. It's very old school, pen and paper. In the quickest time that you can open up a company, it takes 3 days. The quickest time. I'm saying you're a jet speed because you do appointments with multiple places and whatnot, and you have to have capital to start with. When I started in 2022, if I'm not wrong, it was 50,000 lira, which is about 2 to 2,500 Australian dollars right now. That might be increased, I don't know. But you need to have money to start with as well. I would start off with a lawyer or an accountant and be on the safe side. That's one of the biggest advices that I would give. Yeah.
When it comes to investments into the company, what was your experience finding investors into your project, and what are some of the barriers you came across?
Yeah, so I am finding it quite challenging. I think naive Batu believed in the theory of you just start something and you read all of these investor websites and they say we invest into brilliant ideas that are changing the world, and you sort of buy that and you say, oh my god, I have a brilliant idea, they would definitely invest in me. But it's far from that. Alibaba started in 1999 with a $25 million investment, which equates to about $100 million today with inflation and whatnot. Starting with $100 million is a big deal. Yes, it's a multi-billion dollar decacorn now, but you've started off from such a point where you realize when you're not naive anymore and you start learning that there's big actors in this play. This wasn't a random cool entrepreneur, quirky guy that had a sales pitch and then out of nowhere he got $100 million investment. So then you realize that there's a lot more factors that you need to conquer, and just don't believe everything you read online. There's a lot of things that go into it. I've personally struggled because the sector that I'm in, it requires a lot of cash burning, like we were mentioning before, and that's not something a lot of investors look too keen on unless they have a bigger belief in your overall picture. And I'm not in an industry that is very in demand right now, like an AI, right? AI project idea, give it $500,000 and let's see how it works. I'm also not in a market in which we have a lot of investors willing to just throw out money, right? I'm going to say this because I didn't know this myself, and hopefully a lot of people get value from this. But investment has rounds, and this starts from a pre-seed investor, a seed investor, a Series A investor, a Series B, C, and D investor. I heard this thing on Shark Tank, but I didn't know what it was.
Can you explain a little bit?
Of course, absolutely. Pre-seed refers to an investment that's done to an idea. So there's no product in place, but you've got a good idea, and they want to give you a small ticket investment for you to start exploring this idea. A seed investment is when you've put your idea into fruition a little bit more, and now it's like planting a tree, right? They'll throw the seed in there for you to actually get started, which will push you into MVP phase. MVP is a time for you to test this product in the market. As we pass through these stages, the ticket of investment that's given keeps increasing. So let's say 0 to 50K is your pre-seed, 50 to 250K is your seed, and then you'll have 250 to $1 million is your MVP. Now, if you've proven the concept in MVP, that's when you can start looking at Series A funding, which is about up to $20 million. If that's also been successful, then you can start looking at Series B up to $200 million. Now, what I noticed in the Turkish market is that the Turkish market is not one that has too many investors in Series A+. So after Series A up to $20 million, the money just sort of doesn't run in the economy, which is very different to Australia, England, or the United States, where a Series A funding is another day in the park, right? They do 100 Series A fundings, investors, up to $20 million tickets. This is one of the biggest challenges. When you come to not just Turkey, it might be another market. You might be opening in an African country. You might be opening in Bulgaria of some sort, or Bosnia. You realize that the investors are less willing to give you the big tickets that they would be if your company was headquartered anywhere else. That's a big challenge to deal with.
So how does your conversation so far goes with investors? Let's say I want to invest. So what would be your pitch or your angle? How do you talk to investors? How do you approach them or find them? Where do you look for investors?
Well, there's a lot of obviously a Google search goes a long way, and there's a lot of tools that help you connect with investors much quicker. But I'll tell you a typical conversation. Hello, I have a lovely idea and I want to change the world and make turkeys manufacturing. Okay, how much money have you guys made? What's your revenue? That's a typical conversation. And that hurts, and it stings really badly, because you're here in the belief of your idea being so grand, and then you've got someone that just, don't forget, an investment company has a team, and these teams in the companies are analysts, and what they analyze, pitch decks, and they look at it and they say, okay, he's not making revenue, blah, next. So the first thing I would like to say to all my people that are going through a similar route is that no one cares until everyone cares.
What does that mean?
That means that everyone wants to come in and invest at the same time, which is when you've made money. My suggestion is try to make revenue before you go to investment. I think the conversation will be much more fruitful, because it will change from speaking about an idea to speaking about a real tested product, which is the exact phase that I'm in right now. So like I said, I think I've stopped asking for investment until I've got this target in mind for how much revenue I want to be generating. And once I've reached that revenue is when I'll reach out to investment and say, look what I've done.
What do you see yourself in next, let's say, 6 to 12 months achieving? What would be your ideal outcome?
I think the most important thing that I can do right now for this project is because I've launched, I get feedback from buyers and sellers alike. They will say, oh, this button doesn't work, or I tried to speak to this guy and he didn't respond to me. And everything that you hear, you need to create solutions for, right? And I think that's, for example, a lot of buyers and sellers, I see them messaging on the platform, and then they'll share personal details, like, here's my number, get in touch with me. And then I don't know what happened to that conversation, if they're sold or not sold. So if I could look at that and be like, oh, you know, I can't believe they're doing this, how bad is this? That's, in my opinion, an illogical way to go. My job right now is, what solutions can I provide to this problem? How can I make sure that they stay on the platform? I have some buyers, they get a message, they don't know about it. That means I'm not sending good enough email notifications. So my day-to-day is focused on improving the product to have a better and seamless experience, so that when you go to an investor and they tell you the problems, you have the right solutions to these problems. You're ready to tackle these problems. Yep, this is how I solve this, and that's how I solve that. They will ask you, what issues are you facing? And you have to have an answer for this. And I think my day-to-day looks like, how do I continuously improve the website, improve the technology, and improve the output of my staff members.
How did you find working with the developers? Are you using local developers?
Yeah.
How do you find that experience?
I use local developers. I've created my own team. Alhamdulillah, I'm very blessed to have a fantastic team in which, especially the head developer, the back-end developer, and I have created a bond besides just developing for the platform. He believes in the project, and that's priceless. You can't pay for that, you know? I've been very lucky, and it's almost like he's almost a co-founder on the project without even having a term or an agreement like that of that sort.
What was the experience of the users using the platform so far?
I think the most monumental moment for me so far was when a seller, not only did he meet someone that wants to buy his product, he came to us running saying, what am I going to do? I've never exported, like, how do I do this? How do I navigate this? And we sort of like taught him the ways in how to do this. And we've brought him to a point where he's exported internationally, which is never done before. He's from a local village in Turkey that would have never done this sale. And we've allowed him to take payments overseas. It wasn't so much the sale, it was the fact that we helped someone facilitate this transaction that they never ever would have otherwise. And that on scale is what interests me the most.
So you connected somebody from
Correct.
China
to Turkey.
To some village in Turkey.
Yep.
With the products, or there would be no way that these two parties would otherwise meet.
Exactly.
And they communicated. How do they communicate on your platform?
We've created our own messaging platform. We've actually developed this ourselves, in which They can message, they can send files, they can completely communicate in there. And if they want us to get involved into this conversation, we can get involved into it as well. The reason why someone might be thinking, why didn't you just use a plugin of some sort? The reason behind this is because our platform is very unique, in which if a problem arises between the buyer and seller 6 months after the order, I still need to be able to investigate this. And there was no third-party tool that I found that we can plug into the website that allows us to retrack conversations from 6 months ago, because the file size becomes too large of each message. So we had to create such a system in which we zip the files, and then we can retract them if we need to look and investigate further and help them legally resolve this issue. So we created our own messaging platform to do this, and yeah.
I imagine you are still looking for investment.
Yes.
To grow your business. Who is ideal investor in your business? What are you looking for?
I've got two answers to this. One side of me, the business guy, says whoever gives you $1 million is your guy. That's one way to go about it, because they're willing to give you that money and you know how to create more wealth with this money. But then you're asking my ideal, and I think my ideal investor is a well-renowned company with a brand image in Turkey of success that believes in the concept more than the platform that I've built today. He believes that Turkey needs to digitalize their manufacturing sector, and wants to really get involved in this and can help me with their ecosystem. Some people call it smart money because it's not just money. That would be an ideal case scenario.
I personally believe that Turkey, with its position in the middle of the supply chains globally here, could play a critical role and inspire similar sort of industrial development and economic growth in other countries in the region. How do you see this whole region developing in terms of the business or economy? Are there some trends that you are noticing in general?
I love this question. Growing up, we grew up in a world where the Western world, and in particular America, is the main dominant force of the world. And for a young guy in Australia or anyone else around the world, it seems like this will never fade away. The big superpower, the big guy in the arena will always control everything. But then you start looking into history, and you realize that in history things take turns, and it's always a constant sort of loop of different major actors that take control of the world. And I'm sure if you were in 1600s Ottoman Empire, you thought that the Ottoman Empire would never collapse. Right? You'd think that, wow, such a global superpower, they control all the trade routes. What can go wrong? They've got the highest technology, the biggest cannons, the most land, have taken over empires. What's going to change over here? And then you realize that times change, and with time, new powers, new global superpowers emerge. I guess what I'm trying to get to is this. Yes, today, the global superpower controls everything, right? But this doesn't mean it's always going to be like this, and it's going to shift and change. And when it shifts and changes, there has to be certain powers that can fill in these holes. I see Turkey as one of those powers. Not the only power, but I see Turkey as one of those powers that can help create an ecosystem in countries that it helps. So, for example, you've seen a deal that Turkey made with Somalia right now. Giving Somalia military aid is not enough anymore in this day and age. If you really want to be behind the country, you need to provide it an ecosystem, from its markets to food products to cars to phones to technology. It's a whole ecosystem that you need to provide, because this is what your alternative superpowers are providing. I think Turkey in the past 20 to 25 years has focused on building its ecosystems and has now taken steps in each one of these departments, from the food sector to the manufacturing sector to many, many sectors. And I think this is going to be a super important and pivotal thing when the world starts changing and the main actors start losing their influence. A lot of people are talking about it from now, you know. The UK is not the same UK it was before. Who's going to fill in these? France has lost a lot of its influence in Africa. Who's going to fill in these spots? And there will always be major actors, but I think Turkey is in a very, very prime position to fill in these targets. So there's a lot of demand on Turkish people to be creating the right businesses to facilitate.
How do you see other Muslim countries in the region, and in general Muslim countries, where they might not have same level of manufacturing or economic policies, and they might be years behind what we see here in Turkey in terms of economic development?
I think the Gulf states are trying to diversify their investments. Primarily Saudi Arabia and United Arab Emirates are trying to convert oil money into other things right now. And I think that makes sense for them. I don't think it doesn't make sense for them. But I still see a mistrust between Islamic nations' abilities to actually be a superpower. And I still think that there's not enough faith. So I believe that if faith is built, and this is not by you and I talking or anyway, this is just done by power. How much power can you bring to the world? If faith is built between these nations that are so close to each other, then the power will start increasing and increasing. Like there's a building right across the building where we're here right now called Turkish Devletleri Teşkilatı, Türkiye Devletleri Teşkilatı. I don't know if you've had a chance to have a look at this. It's an organization of Turkic states. Yes, maybe Turkey on its own with 80 million people is not going to change the world. But then once you start adding Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, and Azerbaijan, you add these powers into it, now we have hundreds of millions of people living in an ecosystem, and now you can do greater and bigger things. So my main message would be to believe in one another and try to continuously choose your economic ties wisely with those that you have a bigger affinity with due to religion, culture, etc.
Last question,
Sure.
before I ask you a little bit more off business topic.
Sure.
If somebody is 25 years old, finish university, maybe starting career, or thinking maybe they've got also idea to do business, not necessarily moving to another country, but whatever they are watching, they want to do something.
Yeah.
How do you advise somebody 25-year-old to start acting upon their idea? From thinking about it, developing it, actually starting the business and then growing it?
Yeah, I think my biggest advice is to do multiple things in one time. Don't do one thing. Don't listen to just one advice and try to do that. Apply different strategies and then funnel down onto what works. So what does this even mean? Read books while you're doing this. Keep yourself inspired. Listen to podcasts. Start taking small steps. I think everyone tries to take a big step, one big step. Just take small steps. Do the logo today, and then tomorrow, I don't know, it depends if it's a service or a product-based business, take another step towards this, and then keep taking continuous small steps in which later you will find that it naturally just starts leading you into the right direction. But God wants you to take those steps to start with. God wants you to put yourself into that way, and then I feel as though everything sort of comes towards you. So I think my biggest sort of takeaway would be, don't do one thing. Don't base all your eggs into a single basket and say, put so much effort onto that one basket, like that needs to work. No, it doesn't. Maybe some other thing is going to work, right? So I think you should try to maximize your time efficiently to do multiple things and then find what works and funnel down on it.
So finally, some question.
Yeah.
What do you do for fun here? What's interesting here for you that you do when you are not working?
I think Turkey is a beautiful country to visit, even if it's a weekend getaway with a car. Just go to a little gem of, a certain area of Turkey that you wouldn't have when you just come as a holiday and do big tourism trips, Cappadocia or Istanbul, the classics. So I think just get away to little cities is something fun that I do. But if I'm going to be honest, I don't live a very, very, very fun life here because I'm more focused on sports, work, and watching Galatasaray win games. So I think that's a lot of what I've revolved myself around. Just training, working, spending time with the family. My family lives here, so I have a special case for that as well. Oh, and also just traveling to nearby countries. Fit in a travel. I've, alhamdulillah, just flew over the weekend to the UK. Let's check out the UK. Flew to Netherlands, to Macedonia, to a lot of things. These are you need to take advantage of the situation you're in right now. And for me, it's geographical proximity to places that I always wanted to visit.
Thank you very much for your very thoughtful advice, and we hope that this works out for you. Allah put barak and blessings into this. What is the website where we can check to see your project and maybe learn more about what you do?
Yeah, you can check www.thekaynak.com, which is THEKAYNAK. That's the platform in which you can check the website, and inshallah, the next time we speak, if we do speak, I'll also say download it on the App Store. So that we'll have that underway as well, inshallah.
Thank you very much. It was
Thanks,
a pleasure
brother.
to interview, and we hope, inshallah, to see you next time.
I appreciate your time and I appreciate your kind words. Thank you very much.
Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam.